Hey, this is Jim Howard with Trinity Security Allies, where our ministry is your church's safety. This is kind of a rebroadcast of our Facebook Live that we did back on Sunday, and we're trying out some new technology. We need you to be patient with us on it. I mean, it's the way to go for the future. We know that. We see that working with Zoom, which is what we're using right now, and Facebook, we're going to be able to put out more information for you on different pages and different social media. So while we're working with this, we just kind of ask you that you just be a little patient, because some of this stuff is going to come out real quick, and some of it we just have to work with it and work through it. And this is one of these of where we really want to get it out, but we just could not get it off our Facebook Live because it being a closed group. It just has a security issue in there that we cannot figure out. So instead of holding up and not getting this information out, we decided that we wanted to go ahead and rebroadcast this. So we're doing it again. But today it's going to be just a Zoom recording so that we can get this out on YouTube. Now, you can find out a whole lot of information about us on our trinitysecurityallies.com page. We do go out every Sunday and do a 30-minute Church Safety Network Facebook page post or Facebook Live. We are a nonprofit. All those that are listening, or all of you that look at this, we are looking for financial partners to help us get the word out. We know that over 90% of the churches in the United States are 500 or less, and 60% of those are under 100 or less. So what we want to do is we want to provide education and training for churches, safety teams, so that they can protect their flock at an affordable rate. So we're looking for people who would like to sponsor us. We're looking for people that are looking for a good 501c3. We'd be more than happy to sit down with them and figure out. We just need the support, and we thank you for putting out our information. On our website, we do have resources, free resources, so you can find out more about how to set up a safety team, developing a safety team, developing a safety plan, carrying weapons in church, and Sunday morning, what to look for. And also we have our blogs that we put up something new every month. This month, the April blog is Vulcans, Kobayashi Maru, coronavirus, and Easter. Now, like I said, we're working really hard on trying to put out good quality material stuff, and we're using Zoom to be able to do this. On Monday, April 13th, we did our first webinar where we took a look at 2 inexpensive radios and showed churches that are just starting what they could purchase and with not a lot of money and be able to get really 2 good radios. It's out on YouTube. You can find it out there under Trinity Security Allies. This Thursday at 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock, I'm going to be talking with James Simmons with Simmons Law Group in reference to use of force in churches. I think this is just something that has been a little overlooked here lately, and I know that there's been a lot of interest in church safety and church security, but we have to understand that we have to do this the right way. The more I bring this up along with the professionals, talking to people that I know very well in this field, they're telling me the exact same thing. And they're telling me horror stories of where people not properly trained had put their church in jeopardy of being sued. Some even settling out of court because it's just that much easier to do. So we're going to be talking about that this Thursday night, the 23rd, use of force in the church. You can go out on our webpage, or you can go out on our Facebook page. We have the link there. You have to register for this webinar, and seating is limited. So please go out, and I think you'll find it very interesting. We're also going to be doing some other Facebook training out there on 4/30/2020. We're going to do a webinar on putting together a safety plan. Now, this follows along the book that's already out online that you could pull down, and we can go over it. And if you have questions, you can ask us during this webinar. 5/7, we'll be doing developing a safety team using the ebook again. On 5/14/2020, we're going to be talking about carrying weapons inside of the church. On 5/21/2020, we're going to talk about Sunday morning, what to look for. These are all the ebooks out there that we've done. We're going to go over them, and if you have questions, you can ask for us. Okay, So let's get started. We're going to give you some information over things that we've seen and things that we want to talk about that have just become recently available to us or recently we've noticed, and we want to put it out here for you. On April the 8th of 2020, DHS and FEMA put out a warning saying that when you begin efforts to reconstruct services and welcome congregants back into your houses of worship, please also review your security plans and ensure procedures are in place to protect your facilities and visitors. Although there are no imminent or credible threats at this time, there has been an increase in online hate speech intended to encourage violence or use the ongoing situations as an excuse to spread hate. Additional stressors caused by the pandemic may contribute to an individual's decision to commit an attack or influence their target of choice. Again, DHS, FEMA have no information to suggest such attacks are imminent or even likely. Instead, we're looking to provide you with useful information for planning for restoration of normal operations, whatever they may be. So this brings us really to kind of like the topic of the conversation tonight. I saw somebody ask about, does anybody have any procedures or plans on how to reopen their church? Well, first off, right off the bat, this is going to take a very strong safety team leader. It's very important because he's going to be needing team leaders. They're going to be needing to work with their church leadership and make sure that they kind of follow some procedures, put some things in place. And we'll talk about a couple of those right now. No matter what or how you look at this, until the government says that it is okay for large groups of people to get together, churches are going to be watched. Churches are going to be looked at. Churches are probably going to lose because it's just one of these things that the public is going to complain when we start opening our doors to congregation. Now, let me just say this. I happened to be on a webinar yesterday where some of the top churches, the preachers in top churches across the country had gotten together and was talking about opening up their churches. Every single one of these churches said they were not going to open up until the government allowed them to have large masses of people. Wow, that's a little bit scary. But these were large churches of 1,000 or more that would seat 1,000 or more that have already come together and kind of said, we're not going to do it. I mean, it was really kind of sad. They're talking about continuing to doing online services, but it's also saying that their church buildings are closed and empty. They're really sad. I mean, you could tell by the conversation that there was a little bit of a defeat in there, but it's not over. And God is in control. And when we get back started again, it's going to be great. You're going to see more people at the churches. We're already getting more calls to churches. People are looking for answers, and they're looking for those answers in our churches. So we need to be ready when they show up. Now, pay attention to what your government says. That's the number one thing right there. There's a lot of states out here that have had not that many cases. One case is too many, especially when a death is involved. But some of these states out here who have had fewer than 1,000 cases, they're ready to reopen now. But that doesn't mean every state is going to be that way. Make sure that you follow what your government says. We had a Tampa pastor arrested here in Florida for opening up his church where he was just exceeding what CDC and the state had said as far as people inside the church. He wasn't taking any precautions at all. He had been warned on multiple occasions. So he eventually was arrested, and the sheriff stated his reckless disregard for human life put hundreds of people in his congregation at risk and thousands of residents who may interact with them this week in danger. Now, would you like that to be your church? Now, listen, understand this. I can't wait to get back to church. I'm having a difficult time not being able to go to my church. I love my church. I love the people in the church. But to not to be able to go to church is just, I know it is bad, but we can make it through this. This is almost over. Every day we go through this is a day closer to where this is all over with, and we can start getting back to the new normal that's going to happen. Now, Ron DeSantis, our governor here in Florida, issued a statewide stay-at-home order that went into effect a Friday ago. But he would allow churches or other religious gathering places to continue to hold in-person religious services, regardless of the number of people in attendance, and with regard to the Center for Disease Control and Provincial Social Distancing guidelines. Think about that just for a second. That, even though they said, hey, y'all can meet, they just put a little bit of a damper in there that you need to pay attention to what exactly that means. Now, I'm going to go back to the pastor for a second here in Tampa. He later closed his church, saying on a live stream call-in show, I do this to protect the congregation, not from the virus, but from the tyrannical government. The truth be known, he shut his doors because the insurance had canceled him. His insurance company canceled him. Let's think about that. You don't want to be that church. You don't want to be a church where in Arkansas, nearly 36 people who attended a children's event tested positive for the coronavirus. That's not what you want to hear. And in Sacramento, California, local health officials said Wednesday that about a third of the country's confirmed corona cases are linked to gatherings related to churches. We don't really need that. We have enough problems as it is. Churches are constantly being scrutinized. And the thing of it is we have to be smart about this, and we have to listen to the people out here. And I'll say this multiple times. I can't wait to get back to church. You just don't understand. I have a Monday night group. I'm tired of seeing these guys on my Zoom. I want to see them in person. This technology has been incredible. It's helped us out a lot. It's caused us to be able to get things out online. These are great pieces of equipment, but it does not replace the fellowship that we have when we get together in our churches. But think about the possibility of a lawsuit and a death of someone you know and love by you not following the CDC and the social distancing rules and causing one of your elderly people inside your church to catch the disease and die. You don't think that the family of that deceased person is going to kind of be looking at you really hard? And then also the Department of Homeland Security and FEMA talked about stressors. Let's open up a church where a child dies. Let's open up a church where an elderly person dies. That is a stressor right there, which may cause your church more than just a lawsuit, but actual harm. So please think about this when we get ready to open our churches back up. Now, churches have been resilient on their ideas of how to worship. We've done them online. That's how we do it. We do it online. We do it on YouTube. We do it on Facebook. And then we have Zoom so that we can have small group meetings. We've been using the technology to get ready for it, to keep everything going and to eventually to be able to get back together again. Churches using drive-in movie theaters to have sermons. This is incredible. Or drive through to where the priest or the pastor blesses them and prays for them as they go through. But every single one of these have been met with resistance because there's always going to be somebody out there complaining about that. And that puts law enforcement in a bad way. That puts the state attorney in a bad way. So please think about these things that when we get ready to reopen. So here's some things I'm going to recommend when we do reopen. Document all the procedures on how you're going to keep the church family safe. What we do before services. If you have multiple services, we have a 9 o'clock and we have an 11 o'clock, and then we have a 5 o'clock. What are you doing in between those services? What are you doing to guarantee that your church is clean when the next group of people come in? Are you going to require a mask? If you are, I would make sure that you have some available. Now, this is the nice thing about recording this right here is because we had a lot of topic of conversation on mask. And I want to address that really in a little more detail here. I know that this puts a security issue in here because we all, if I see a person, when I was a police officer, I saw a person going into a bank with a mask on, that to me would be a clue that he's there to rob the bank. When we associate masks a lot of times with danger, trouble, and all these things like that. Other countries they're standard issue. They wear them all the time. It's because of poor air quality or diseases or different things like that. So this is a new mindset that we got to take a look at. And this, we got to be thinking about this. Because if you're the safety team leader and your church calls you in and says, hey, Jim, we're going to open up May 1 and we're going to require people to be masked, are you going to say no? Or are you going to learn to adapt and overcome? I think you're going to learn how to adapt and overcome. You're going to figure out, you're going to train your safety team. You're going to start looking for other things. We teach threat profiling. These are things that we can teach you to look at body language, to be able to tell whether or not a person is a threat or not. There's certain characteristics you can look at and immediately see whether or not this person is a threat. Now the other thing that kind of concerned me when this person said, hey, this just, brings up more security concerns. My question to him was, well, and I mean this in a nice way. He does bring up a valid point. I have no problem with this point. But I brought up, how long have you been at this church? We recommend that if you're going to have a safety team leader, he needs to be somebody that is a member of the church. Every team member should be a member of the church because they should know, they should practice getting to know everybody that comes into your church. And I can tell you right now that I will recognize people with mask on by their body, by their hair, by the way they walk. I recognize the guy. I run on a trail in the morning and I saw this guy. He's always out there 6 o'clock in the morning, never can see his face, but he's got a unique walk. I'm standing at the church door one day watching this guy walk toward us and I see that unique walk. And I walk out to him and said, hey, don't you run on the trail? And he goes, yes, I do. So there's things that we should be looking at. You should be able to recognize everybody that that comes in with a mask on. You should be. And those that you do not know, you need to walk up to them, get to know who they are, invite them into your church, talk to them, or have somebody, the greeters or the ushers, go talk to them if you don't want to be that first person of contact. But somebody needs to go and talk to that person and find out who that person is. Yes, it may be somebody that comes to your church all the time that you haven't seen, because if you have a large church and you may feel a little bit ridiculous there, but who cares? You're making sure you're protecting the flock. You're making sure that you're watching out for the congregation. If the church comes to you and says no mask, okay, think about this for a second, and one of your elderly people come into your church with a mask on, are you going to go up to them and tell them they can't wear that mask? I'd be really careful there. So if we will allow our elderly, because of pre-existing conditions, to wear masks, why would we not allow young people who are cautious to wear masks? I think this is an overblown thing that we don't really need to worry about. What we need to worry about is trying to get people back into the churches. Let's figure out a way of doing that. Social distancing, unless you got a small congregation, we have a large congregation. I can tell you that at our 11 o'clock service, there's 800 people there. Will we go live? Will we go back to church May 1? I kind of doubt it. I think that we will probably continue to do it online until the government comes out and says, okay, y'all can now go back to movies. Y'all can now go back to concerts. Y'all can now go back to these big social gatherings, and just please practice safe distancing, practice washing your hand. Please don't sneeze on people. If you don't feel good, don't go. These are just some simple things that we can do that helps us in the flu season. So why shouldn't we be practicing the same thing when this virus has started to die down? We're starting to see the decrease right now. It is going to be soon, but we need to still pay attention to this. Social distancing is just going to be something that's probably not going to happen right at this moment in time. And who is going to enforce it? Are you going to give your safety team members a stick that's 6 foot long and tell them that anybody that gets close to each other that's not a family member, go up there and put that stick up there and say, hey, y'all keep your distance? Of course you're not. You're not going to be doing that. This is why you probably would ask for a mask, because then you could do a little social contact. Please, I know I have a nurse friend of mine that's going to say no hugging. That's going to be difficult for me to follow. Check with your local law enforcement. Get a temperature reading on how they feel about how things are progressing. If they are concerned that you're going to have a church service with 1,000 or more people, I would be leery of having that church service. If your law enforcement agency, you feel like they may walk in the door and start enforcing some of these CDC guidelines, maybe it's best just to keep it online for a couple of more weeks. They're going to open it up soon to where we're going to be able to get out of the houses. They're going to open it up soon to where we be able to sit at a restaurant, maybe outside or not as close together, but they're going to start opening this up soon. Let's be patient. But you have to understand that if you're a church and you go to your local law enforcement and say, hey, we're meeting anyway, and we've got 1,000 members and we're going to get together and we're going to hug and we don't care about masks, we don't care about social distancing, you're putting yourself in a bad spot. And plus, let me promise you, the neighborhood is going to complain about you. We already see it where in news articles, when churches get together, most of the time the complaint comes from one of the neighbors that see all the car in your parking lot and know that you're not practicing social distancing inside the church. You run the risk of running into some overzealot police departments that we've heard of. I mean, to have an outdoor movie theater style church service and they're writing down license tags of the people, I'm a little upset about that. And trust me, I'm law enforcement. I bleed blue. But we have to be smart about that. Make clear here, one of the things I want to say is the pastor that was charged in Tampa is not a conviction. That's just a charge. So you have to understand that. He will have his day in court. State attorney might not even touch this, but the newspaper will have a field day on your church. Right in the middle of a pandemic, is your church going to be one that sticks its nose up to the state and the CDC? I don't think so. I wouldn't want to go to that church. Look, I talked about this once before. We have to understand that the needs of the one inside our church is just as important as the needs of the many. So if we go to church and one person has the virus and gives it to an elderly person that passes away and dies, our church is lost. It really has. We're going to be known in the paper as a church that fought the CDC, didn't listen to any of the requirements, didn't pay attention to it. We just decided, caution to the wind and go and do that. Don't do that, please. I don't want to read about you, and I read about them all the time. Speaking of masks, I can tell you right now, if our medical team does show up, they're going to be wearing masks because they've been in the trenches all along. They're probably going to be wearing gloves. So, remember these things when we start to get ready. Talk about what we're getting ready to do, set up the procedures. We need to take signs. We need to be trained. Safety team members, your greeters, your ushers need to be trained to look for signs of virus. And the questions asked. It's really 3 little easy questions, but I'm going to say this right now. I have to say this. I found a 4th one today because it cracked me up. 3 simple questions, and then I would ask this last one. Have you ever been around anyone that has traveled internationally in the last 2 months? And have they been tested for the virus? Have you had a fever, cold, or flu-like symptoms in the last month or been around somebody that has? Have you been around anyone that has tested positive for the virus in the last month? 3 easy questions. Now, to me, here's the 4th one because I just heard this today. They asked somebody these 3 questions, and they went into an office space, and they said, and the person said, yeah, but you didn't ask me the 4th person. Have I been diagnosed with the virus, which I have, but I show no symptoms of it. So you might want to ask them, have you been diagnosed with the virus also? Because they don't need to be in your church. A yes to any of these questions would be suspect at best. Know in advance how you would handle the consequences of any virus outbreak at your church. Be ready to talk to the press. Be ready to say we took all precautions for social distancing, all precautions to what the CDC had recommended. Now, I'm going to tell you something else. You need to be having your cameras up because it's very important, because if you don't, who are you going to know who is associated with that person inside the church? You need to be able to pinpoint as soon as that person walks in the door to when they leave, how many people they were around, because you need to contact those people and make sure that they go and get tested for it. So these are things that you really need to be prepared for when we get ready to open up our churches. There's a whole list of other things that you can go out and read about. I found a very interesting article by a guy by the name of Ken Brady at kenbrady.com. 24 questions your church should answer before people return. I went in there and started reading that. And I was like, oh, yeah. Do you have a coffee bar? Maybe you shouldn't have during this time until it becomes, till the virus is gone. Do you do meet and greets? We stopped doing our meet and greets at our church right before we closed the church down. Some really good stuff in there that you need to be paying attention to. Throw one more thing out here. Your children's ministry, that's just another whole story, another whole topic that I'm just not going to get into right now. But just think about it. They're going to be running around and acting like crazy. So it's going to be difficult, again, to do social distancing. I just want you to remember to be smart in this. Listen to the guidelines. If it's something that you feel that you should not open up your church until it is all over with, then I would applaud you and say, talk to your congregation about it. When your congregation comes back, have a conversation with them. If you can send out those 4 questions before you start back opening up again, send out those 4 questions. If you're going to require masks, make sure that you have masks on hand. If you send out a blast, an email blast, YouTube, all these things like this, and say, hey, we're going to require masks until this is completely gone, there's going to be people that don't hear it. We changed our church time from 8:30 to 9 o'clock. There were people showing up at 8 o'clock to be there on time. They were on time, that's right, but they were an hour early. So make sure that you have some when they're there. Social distancing, I don't know how you're going to do it. Document how you're going to clean the church. Make sure that you have these things in place, have these things ready to go. Know how you're going to handle the press, the people that are going to contact you, everything else. Have a point of contact. If somebody calls and says, we have a case of coronavirus and the person is a member of your church and says that they were there last Sunday, be prepared for that. How do you handle that? I can't wait to get back to church. I cannot wait to get back to see my friends and family with the Trinity Security Allies, the Church Safety Networking Group. We are working on this very hard. We're going to be putting out some Zoom training videos for you. We're going to be putting these out for free for a while. And so we're going to give you kind of an idea of what we're getting ready to do in the future. We're going to put more and more on YouTube and Facebook, just the different things that we can do right now, because we really feel like that God led us to this right now because of this virus. And we had stayed away from it for a while, but now we feel much better on it. So we're excited and ready to go with this type of technology. Come out this Thursday, the 23rd, at 7 o'clock p.m. for an interesting conversation between myself, James Simmons with Simmons Law Group, on use of force in the church. I think you'll find it very beneficial, because we need to make sure that when we train, that we're training for one reason and one reason alone. And that is the expansion of the kingdom of God. That's just all there is to it. Second part of this is, of course, protecting the flock. But the first part is making sure that we're working for Christ, working for God, and that we're expanding his kingdom. That's it. That's just the bottom line. Before we go, I just want to leave you with this, John 14:27. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. Those are very powerful words from our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Remember, do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. This is almost over. This is almost over. Listen, during the coronavirus, we had our house redone. Our house it's been over a month and a half of having bathrooms torn apart, the kitchen torn apart. I'm washing my dishes in the laundry room. If I can overcome this and not lose my mind, you can stay with me. Contact me, Jim at TrinitySecurityAllies.com. Go to our website. You can find our information. You can contact us. I'll be more than happy to talk to anybody that's running into an issue about this virus. We will overcome this. We will prevail. It is God's plan. And he has a great opportunity for us to do right now, to be that lighthouse in the middle of the storm. So exercise that, be that light, be the salt. I thank you so much for you coming out and looking at this and listening to this. And I hope to see you soon. Be blessed and be safe.